So thank you all for joining me. I am a fellow with the Center for Academic and Faculty Excellence. I use she, her pronouns, and today we're going to talk about eco AI. And in doing research for this presentation today, I added an additional marker of punctuation. You might notice a question mark. Because for some, eco and AI might be a misnomer or still might be a little hazy whether or not eco and AI can go together. So that question mark is kind of to keep the inquiry going. And I hope that after this webinar, all of you will continue exploring, and this can kind of be a knowledge community where we can create knowledge together, which is what CAFE's goal really is. So I hope this presentation isn't an end-all be-all in ecology and AI, but really just getting the conversation going, whatever discipline you're coming from. And we can continue the conversation. So I've built in a little bit of resources to facilitate that. I'll go over. But first, I'm just going to go over a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So I think it's good to always start with just our general knowledge and common sense of what AI is and what sustainability is. So we have a little exercise with Mentimeter to do a word cloud where we can see kind of where we're at in common phrases and words that are associated with both sustainability and AI. So I don't want to assume everybody knows what either of those terms mean. And so that's kind of going to ground us in the terminology that we're going to be using today. And then we're going to do some group exercises. We'll go into breakout rooms and do 3 case studies from different disciplines that have approached sustainability and working with AI in one form or another, and just kind of discuss some common questions, try and isolate the problems by discipline of working with AI and potential ways of remedying those problems, both from the scale of being a student, being a teacher, being a researcher, and then kind of scaling up to the level of institutions, since we are all a part of CGU, really thinking about how to hold the institutions that we're a part of accountable in the research that we do. And then we'll come back and share out and do a little bit of analysis on the supply chain and the value chain, the economics of AI, and understand a basic concept of upstream and downstream economics. So upstream, who holds the power, typically investors, owners of the technology, and then downstream, who's most affected by this technology, and different kinds of ways of measuring that. And then I'm going to share out some resources. Again, CAFE is all about the production of knowledge, ethical knowledge, responsible knowledge creators, and understanding that knowledge isn't created in a vacuum, but really collectively. And so I made some bibliographies, and these slides are also available in a Google folder for all of us. So I encourage you to use the bibliographies, use the slides, and keep the conversation going in the documents so that we can keep talking as we learn and explore after this webinar. And any questions so far on anything I've gone over?
No.
All right, cool. So we can get started now. So for those of you who haven't used Mentimeter before, it's a word cloud, and it's a way for us to kind of visually see what our thoughts and feelings and dispositions are about AI. So if you will join me, you can either follow the bit.ly link in your phone, you can use the QR code, or use this code here, and it's going to take you to a Mentimeter site. And I'm going to just show you what that looks like.
Oh gosh, I don't know how this does.
And for those of you who might not want to go through Mentimeter, feel free to just drop in the chat. When you hear AI, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Or maybe you've researched AI consistently for a little bit and you might have a formal definition for us. And what about sustainability? when you think of AI and sustainability, what comes to mind? And I'm going to pull up Mentimeter and we could see kind of what the group is thinking here. And I'm also going to drop in the chat the link for everybody in case you didn't have time to grab it. There's the link. And here's the code. Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. I see some folks are already in the Mentimeter. Beautiful. Okay, great. Inherently contradictory. Wow, that's really cool. Sustainability, complexity, large language model, ethical, doomsday. Okay, I wonder who put that in there. And just for those of you who haven't used Mentimeter before, the more a word gets used, the bigger it becomes. So it seems like everybody's kind of putting in different words. Tool, LLMS, resource demands. Interesting. Accelerated catastrophe. Okay, so I see doomsday, I see catastrophe. Large language model, that would be something like ChatGPT. For those of you that have used that. Care, I really like that. Facilitator. A lot of LLM, large language model, that seems to be very common. That's the most common iteration, which is ChatGPT. And I'm just going to check on the chat here. Oh, know it all. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So yeah, it seems like there's an association with knowledge, hierarchized knowledge, language, and catastrophe, which for those of us who are literary scholars, I think that's the irony isn't lost there. So language, knowledge, and catastrophe tend to be in a nexus with each other, and care and our ethics. Does anybody want to comment on any of this? Anything coming to mind before we kind of move on? Can't see you all, but feel free to just unmute yourself. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, that tends to be I think where a lot of us are at. Inherently contradictory and resource demands were actually the biggest. So it seems like those are the ones that were most used. And maybe we'll find out a little bit more about why. But let's get back to the presentation here. And can you all see my presentation now, or are you still seeing the Mentimeter? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, thank you. I see some heads nodding. Okay, so that was just a good group exercise, just to see a baseline of where we're at with AI. And it seems like everybody sees the potential of this technology, the gravity of the technology, and kind of the inherently contradictory nature of technology, which when there's a big technological innovation in society, typically all those things come hand in hand. So no surprises there. And Emily Bender actually calls AI a stochastic parrot, for those of you that talk about the large language model, and kind of the limitations of what a large language model can do. So it can't necessarily think critically. A lot of that higher level critical thinking skills that's associated with the humanities, it's very difficult for AI, but it can parrot different patterns and respond to various prompts. And Harvey Mudd did a wonderful lecture series with 4 or 5 AI experts, one of which was Professor Emily Bender, who studies linguistics at the University of Washington. And I linked her lecture in the slides, so you'll all have the opportunity to watch it. But one of the most valuable things I think from her lecture was how she defines sustainable AI as intersecting with our environment, our ethical and social realms. And really, that kind of looks at the carbon footprint, global warming, extractive technologies, and what we might call data colonialism, or areas back to that upstream downstream model, where those with power and property and means create negative externalities for those that might not have access to that power. And we're going to kind of look into what that might mean in terms of data sets and practices a little later on. But this I thought was a really nice, succinct way of defining the intersections associated with AI and sustainability. And I really encourage you to go back to Professor Bender's lecture when you have a chance. And so some key lenses that we're going to look at today are a technical lens. We're going to look at the infrastructure of AI, the data centers, the warehouses, the data sets that go into training AI. So we kind of learn what a human is, what a flower is through poetry, through cultural transmission, through our families and institutions like universities. That's usually how knowledge is produced in our social realm. But AI has to learn about that through data sets. And data sets are controlled by the scientists that feed them those data sets. And so that means that there's human biases going into those data sets. And that can mean something as simple as what is a human is going to be biased depending on what is fed into the AI in terms of pictures, words, images of humans. And that's how AI learns, is through those data sets. So that's kind of a technical framework that we're going to look at when we're thinking of AI. There's infrastructural frameworks in terms of our institutional adoption. So CGU adopted ChatGPT, and right now it's being piloted. And so that's one way of an infrastructure that's being built out at scale. You'll find out that most high schools, most universities are all adopting their own partnerships with AI companies. So that's creating an infrastructure in addition to corporations and other types of use, like Microsoft's Copilot. It's now in every Microsoft computer. Every update is going to have Copilot. And so we're building an infrastructure at scale. We're going to look at lens of power, again, that upstream, downstream kind of tension between who has the power with AI and how that power is exercised. And extractivism, so interfacing with the land. What does it mean to use water with AI, use different types of energy, and what kind of carbon footprint? In addition to the labor and the equity, what types of labor is involved with AI? And then kind of back to the infrastructural element, institutional practices and best practices. So I'll pause here and just see if anybody has any additional questions or comments. And you're welcome to drop that in the chat also. Just going to quickly check the chat here. Okay, cool. And yeah, does anybody want to share a little bit about why they came today and what they hope to get from this webinar?
See how we can do this.
I see in the chat Bender's lecture link, and yes. So I'm going to share the slides, and that will have Bender's lecture linked into the slides because I really want you to see it, and I'm curious what you think. But yeah, I'm sure many of you came for resources, and I have 3 bibliographies. This is a webinar I've been doing for the past 2 years. So you have a good amount of sources. And for this particular webinar, I really tried to look at 2025 data and peer-reviewed research that came out. So you'll really have the cutting edge in terms of research. Anybody else?
Um, I,
Yeah, Professor Martin.
yeah, I just wanted to say I know not a lot about AI, but I'm interested in its promise and possibilities. Um, and don't think it's wise to take an automatic negative view. I thought that phrase was very interesting, of accelerated catastrophe. I would say many of my colleagues in the humanities are quite negative, maybe not surprisingly so, but the worry of oh, borrow, taking material and not giving credit, plagiarism, that students would use it to write papers and that kind of thing. Um, and I keep saying that, and so they would like it all to go away, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to go away. And so I think the thing to do is to find out how we can, you know, we people, the designers and the specialists and so forth, can design it in a way better and better to avoid some of the problems that, as much as possible, that AI seems to pose to people who really are afraid of it and are very, I think it's going to ruin the world. I don't know, maybe I'm just more optimistic than I should be, but I have a feeling it's going to contribute more than it's going to destroy. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but my colleagues are sure it's going to destroy everything. The humanities will be just totally sidelined, and that there will be no sort of academic integrity possible and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's why I'm here. I'm just curious. I don't know a lot, and as I say, I'm optimistic about the future, but I do realize there are a lot of problems, and I think people need to work on them and try to figure out how to solve them, and not just wring their hands and, say, put it in the category of sinful behavior if you use AI. Because, it's going to, I mean, and already it's apparently saving lots of people lots of time with some more mundane tasks and so forth. So anyway, that's why I'm here. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Martin. And yeah, I think it's really special that we have so many folks in the humanities. And I see some STEM folks. So I think we're going to have a really fruitful discussion because, yeah, I think it's good to be optimistic and skeptical, but really see where those points of intervention might be. Because I agree, it's perhaps we don't have the luxury to just throw our hands up um, and not get them dirty with some of these harder questions. And it's my hope that we can figure out key areas where we can innovate and intervene in the process and really see what we can do to put those humanist values that the humanities is known for into these processes. Um, and so yeah, I'm grateful for that comment. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay. All right, perfect. So just kind of moving along here. Yeah, just kind of like what Professor Martin alluded to, sustainability, it's not sometimes it can be associated with just like carbon footprint or water usage, electricity. But it's not only these technical, quantifiable things, it's also about our own power and responsibility. Because in a large way, our technology is a reflection of ourselves, just like writing is a technology, and language, kinship, all different kinds of social things that wouldn't normally be considered technical could be considered technologies. And it's important to make them reflect our values as well as our desires for ease and deeper connection. And so AI can be associated with efficiency, which can be good, or can sometimes lead to cutting corners. And it's just good to have as critical lens as possible when we're looking at these things. So I hope when you walk away from this webinar, you have at least some strategies to lower your own waste and to evaluate these things critically. And for a deeper dive on just lower carbon footprint in academia, I recommend watching my previous webinar. I think it was like a couple weeks ago. And that gets into like literally sustainable scholarship when it comes to sending emails, downloading PDFs and file sharing, and just conference travel. Like it kind of gets into the sustainability of being a scholar and some really simple things to do there. So I'm not going to get into that so much today because we're focused on AI. But if you are curious about sustainability and like university life, scholarly life, that was centered more in the previous webinar, along with a deeper dive into AI water usage and kind of some statistics on the carbon footprint, electricity usage, and things of AI. So I'll touch on that briefly just as a recap. But again, if you want to get a slightly different, deeper dive into academia and sustainability, I recommend that other webinar as well. So yeah, just kind of moving along here. Now we're going to do a brief workshop because I really want us to define AI and the problems that we face together. So I can kind of anticipate maybe disciplinarily what problems there might be, just like Professor Martin mentioned with plagiarism, with originality, with authorship, authenticity, and critical thinking in the humanities. There might be other areas in your discipline and other problems that you're really grappling with in terms of AI or other possibilities, positive possibilities that you might be looking forward to with AI. And so I'm going to drop a Google document in the chat. And I'm just going to kind of break us up into, let's see, I'm going to break us up into 3 groups, given the number of folks that are here. And I encourage you to just, depending on what group you are, group 1, 2, or 3, there's going to be a case study. And I have a PDF linked to this QR code or to this bit.ly here. And you can click on the QR code and you can go to this bit.ly, which I'm going to drop in the chat. So no worries there, but you're just going to read this source. So if you're group 1, if you're group 2, you're going to have a different case study. This one is sustainability and computing. Or group 3, making AI less thirsty, looking at the water use of AI. And then you're going to go to the Google Doc and just try and answer as many questions as you want. If you can answer 2, that's great. Defining AI based on the case study, defining some kind of problem. If you can get to any potential remedies you see, that would be wonderful. But just, again, designate a facilitator of your group. Scribe, somebody to kind of write down in the Google Doc. I'm not sure if all of you have access to computers. Some of you might be driving or on your phone or in between places, which is perfectly fine. And then just try and answer at least 2 of these questions. So I'm going to put up some breakout rooms and I'm going to drop the link to the Google Doc where you can all kind of put your answers and work through these questions, and the link to the slides where you'll be able to click on the case study documents. And while I'm doing that, does anybody have any questions on that exercise at all? Or again, I'm going to put in a link to a Google Doc. And you're just going to type, you can use this Google Doc as a living document. So you can type in it, you can return to it anytime. All of you have editing access. So this is going to be, I just dropped it in the chat. This is going to be where you're going to kind of write your answers when I put you into breakout rooms. And we all have access to this document for as long as you want. So you can return to it and just check it out. And then I'm going to put in the link to the slides for today. And that's going to have, as Reese mentioned, all of the links to all of the sources from my slides and also areas where you can click and you can view, you can access any of the materials which are hyperlinked on the slides. So that should be the link I just dropped into the slides. And the Google Doc, I already see several of you in the document, so I'm glad you were able to get in. And now I'm going to break us up into breakout rooms. So you'll be either group 1, 2, or 3. And you'll just kind of read through the material and just see if you can come up with a definition of AI problem, either in the material or something that stands out to you, and a potential remedy. And okay, so I'm going to just invite you all to go into breakout rooms.
I don't know how to do this. Oh dear.
And if anybody needs any help, just stay in the main room, and I'm happy to help you all. Okay, and room 1, 2, or 3. I'm opening the rooms now, and room 1 is group 1, room 2, group 2, room 3 is group 3. Okay. And hi, Jeff. How are you doing? Okay, so I'm going to broadcast. Hi, Professor Martin. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was in a space by myself, so I don't quite know. I'm not good at this kind of maneuvering, I have to admit. But
Sure, sure.
I can be, somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
Well, why don't we be a group? Because Jeff is also with us in this main room. So it looks like we could just kind of be a group amongst ourselves, you, Jeff, and myself. And then yeah, it looks like there's room 1 there. So I don't know if you want to read any literature or if you already have some thoughts. We could just kind of discuss the questions together. Um, or if you want to kind of check out any of the literature, I can share my screen and or actually I could also drop the link in the chat and and you can look through it and just see um kind of what you think about. I'm going to try and see if you can access that. I'm just dropping it in the chat there.
So I can just open up the,
Yeah. You should be able to click on just that little bit.ly link.
I think I did, I'm not sure. And then it has messages, harnessing artificial. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, and then the link for the Google Doc. Should I click on that?
If you I could be the scribe, so I'm happy to write in the Google Doc for us if you like. So if you want to kind of um be the facilitator, you can facilitate a discussion and I can kind of write notes and then um yeah, just keep track of whatever we discuss.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm very in a very basic place, so I'm not a sophisticated user by any means. And I'm even a little technophobic, but I I I realize now I've gotten to the point where I couldn't do my job without without the computer. I mean, there's no way that you could be um, sufficiently responsive to everyone that you need to be responsive to without the without technology without computer technology. So I remember pretty well when I was faculty executive committee chair. I can't, this is, by now it's probably 15 years ago, maybe 20. Um, that I realized I couldn't. There was a sort of CGU crisis at the time about math and philosophy, and they wanted to close both departments down because they weren't sufficiently, they weren't sustaining themselves. And I realized I couldn't go to all the meetings and talk to everybody unless we had computer communication. It was just impossible. You had to have meetings on, and so forth. And so it kind of saved the day for me. Um, and we were able to resolve the problem and come up with some constructive solutions just because, we could meet as a group at times that, people wouldn't be on campus, but they could get to their computer and so forth. Anyway, that worked out pretty well. And I think a lot of people were pretty skeptical. What? CGU on email, us using the computer for meetings? No, no, I don't think so. Um, but it worked out. So now I'm wondering about how, in the humanities anyway, AI might be useful for courses. I mean, I'm trying to think of how do you integrate AI into a course if you wanted to, but you just don't know enough about it to know what the possibilities are. So
Um,
that's, you know.
sure. So I'm hearing like course, well, first responsiveness for professors and faculty, and kind of course integration in general in the learning process. And then also, like you mentioned, FEC and just committee responsibilities, governance responsibilities, and kind of making all of that manageable. Um, and so I think, yeah, one thing I don't know if you've attempted yet in your syllabus is an AI policy or adding that in.
Yeah, I'd like to, but I don't have anything there. I'm not even sure what you'd put in.
Sure. So I think I'll make. So I'll get some sample AI policies and from some sample syllabi. And I'm sure you're not the only one who has that question because in a lot of our cafe courses, we ask students to kind of stretch themselves and make, just take a stab at an AI policy. And that can be how to cite AI. So how do you want them citing AI? What counts as plagiarism? And if you don't want to define that, there is a webinar that the library offers on AI in particular. So you might want to have your students watch that. And that'll kind of give them an overview on plagiarism with AI. Um, and then just a usage policy. Another thing you might want to put is kind of the general cost of AI. Like you might want to put a blurb that for every search, it's like running a light bulb for 20 minutes. Or for every question you ask AI, it's a bottle of water that it takes. So just to kind of, how do you put the costs or the externalities, the downstream costs that we might not normally associate because we're at our computers and we don't see the water being used, we don't see the electricity being used in the 2 seconds it takes to talk to AI. So how do you maybe put a little blurb or something to have students understand the cost of it too? So those are some ways, but I think it'd be good to also have some concrete examples. And I could think about putting that in, adding that to the folder and then emailing you also. But I noticed that we have Daniel. Hi, Daniel. I saw you come in.
Hello there.
Hi. I'm not sure when you came in, but we're in the middle of just talking about 3 questions here. Um, Defining AI, defining a problem. So you heard Professor Martin and I talk about AI policies in classrooms and different ways of using it in the college governance or just operations. and then identifying a potential remedy. So do you have any thoughts about any of those?
Well, yeah, I guess popular nowadays what we can or how we can define AI it's or what we refer to is a lot about these large language models. So right, the algorithms that will give you the answers with a simple prompt. And I think one of the problems that we have right now, or that I can notice that I don't know how that's gonna go, but it's like what are the students gonna learn, or like what is the process of learning from a person using AI? Because if you have like all the answers, maybe you don't process the information really well in your brain, right? So I think that's a challenge that we may have as students or as instructors about the usage of AI.
Yeah, no, I think that gets to the heart of kind of what we do at a university is produce knowledge. And yeah, I'm just curious, what discipline are you coming from, Daniel?
So yeah, I'm in the information systems and technologies department actually.
That's wonderful. Because Professor Martin and I are in the School of Arts and Humanities, so this is kind of a cool transdisciplinary area. How have you seen AI integrated into your classrooms?
Um, well, in the classrooms, I say like students use that a lot for like help, right? Aid with the exercises in the classrooms to get like a quick information from the subject that you're dealing with, right? So I think that's the most popular use that I've seen. So probably like anything from like describing a topic or analyzing a paper or coding even, like it's like personally like for coding it helps me a lot because I don't know like I'm not a professional coder, but it really helps to have some examples of how you can do the things and troubleshoot it even. So I think on that end it's really helpful.
I totally agree, actually. And that might be another area for you, Professor Martin, is with Canvas. AI can code a Canvas class in like 5 minutes. So if you need to build out a class or if you're kind of looking for um, quick Canvas, just kind of modules, assignment pages, it can do that very quickly and very easily. So if you kind of want to talk about that or you ever want any instruction there, just send me an email. And yeah, that's course design is another way that it can save professors a lot of time.
Hmm.
Because I know it takes quite a bit of time to build out a Canvas course by hand. And yeah, ChatGPT can do it in like minutes.
Huh.
Um, yeah, that's pretty amazing. Okay, so what about any remedies? I know kind of we talked about like ease, responsiveness, information access. Um, any thoughts on remedies for maybe the pitfalls of AI?
Well, I
Uh,
think
Yeah, well, on my end, I don't know. Like that's hard question to put together. I maybe what you were talking about. I don't know because I was late, but yeah, it's kind of like creating some policies or some structures, workflows for how we should approach to technology, right?
Correct. Yeah. And we'll talk about the workflows. I also got a really great video that I put into the folder I'm going to share with everybody. And it's on the humanities in AI and particularly essay writing and critical thinking. And an MIT Media Lab study was done where they gave students access to Google access to ChatGPT and access to nothing, just their own minds for 20 minutes, and gave them essay prompts. And the first round, the students with nothing actually had to make tremendous amount of connections because everything had to be recalled in their mind. And so there was obviously a lot of mental struggle that created a lot of conversation between different areas of the brain, which created more connections, more activity, and strengthened those neural networks. And also, students who had nothing were able to recall aspects of their writing, which the students that use ChatGPT and Google were less able to do. So if you kind of want to test your students, it's very difficult to see. In some ways, it's easy in terms of the M dash. AI uses the M dash quite a bit. So that's a sign of writing with an AI tool. If you see a lot of M dashes, if everything looks just very neat, a little too neat, but really those are unreliable, ways. They're not 100%, but one of the ways is, can students recall what they've written? Because that's, obviously that would show that they've internalized the thinking. And then thankfully they did the study again and they switched the students and they gave the students that had access to nothing access to ChatGPT. And they found that the students actually had greater recall and ability if they started with nothing and then after got ChatGPT. So kind of that grappling and struggling to form those connections and critically think is important. But again, it can be assistive if you go through that process or trial by fire, and then you get access to a technology like ChatGPT or Copilot. And so it's not kind of back to that gray area. It's not that not having ChatGPT is going to make a better writer. There is potentially interfaces and equity issues where even students who might be afraid to ask questions to their professor might ask ChatGPT a question. So those having that ability to interface with this LLM is important. But really what the study showed is that primarily you need to grapple with those ideas by yourself with your sources first to kind of create that learning and memory infrastructure in your brain. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And that study was in the previous webinar I did. So those slides are in the folder I'll give you, and you can check that out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to check on the other groups and bring everybody back into the room now, and we can see kind of what the other groups have been talking about. All right, they're going to be given 60 seconds there. And let me pull up my slides here. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay. I think it gives them 20 seconds or so to come back. And I also got another video of a humanities, a history professor, and he kind of talks about the critical thinking skills and AI in his classroom. So yeah, that's also going to be in the folder. So for humanities folks, there's some cool materials there. But welcome back, everybody. Thank you for using the Google Doc and all of your participation so far. Just going to give folks a time to get settled into the room. And yeah, does anybody want to kind of share out on their process and what their group discussed? And I can't quite see you all while I share my screen, so feel free to unmute yourself if there's an idea, a remedy, a problem, or an analysis that you thought was particularly interesting. Oh, yeah. Hi, Tony.
Right. AI is thirsty.
Oh, great, great, great.
So, well, I put it down in the doc. Others can see me and John were busy typing away.
Let me pull up the doc, actually. That might be easier for folks so they could see what you wrote. And just let me know if you can see my screen all right. And you were group 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Nice. Okay. Oh, great, great, great. Okay, walk us through, Tony.
Um, well, I guess John wrote a nice definition there about so about AI, and it's well, bottom line is these AIs, there's no one model type. Usually we're talking about large language models, and they're very thirsty because they require a lot of electricity and a lot of water to cool those servers that are very hot and only work when they're at a certain temperature. So water is usually not reported. We usually hear about the electricity being used, which itself is a very, it's measured in megawatts, gigawatts, can fuel quite a few towns. So what's not reported as much is the water usage for cooling and for electricity generation. And so some of the things that I kind of looked at in the paper where water usage is not reported. Usually the carbon footprint in with respect to the electricity generated and the fuel, and usually petrochemical fuel that needs to be burned in order to generate it. Um, Also, it talked about other things like solar energy and when we train these models. But so I just put down here that the AI is already ecologically connected. It's part of the problem. Will it be part of the solution? So, how ethical is it to maintain these AI systems when it's, so I just mentioned that. Um, we obviously need to do more research on the impact of ecological impact of training AI models and the amount of water used. Um, and how does it impact the communities that don't have to have access to that water? Is it an equitable use of resources? Will it be able to make up the difference when we go to wars for resources? And water is access to clean potable water in order to grow crops and feed people, and amongst other things, is a huge issue. And I remember taking a class, and basically the officer, Air Force officer giving it, said, "We go to war for resources." You know, so what I found really shocking, a fact, is 10 to 50 bottles of water per session. When I'm asking ChatGPT, that was shocking to me. It was like, damn. So sort of like in Dune, the book Dune, where water is basically such a precious resource that, it was beyond precious. It was life. So AI is thirsty. And a lot more research needs to be done in order to realize how its impacts are. And it's also an ethical problem.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, that's beautifully put. Beautifully put. And that's kind of dovetails with something that we discussed in our group with Professor Martin. And we were group 2. Actually, we were group 1. And we discussed kind of AI policies in classrooms. And do you put like a blurb, maybe in italics? A typical session uses 10 to 15 bottles of water, and a typical question is 1 bottle of water or using a light bulb for 20 minutes. So just like you said, it's an invisible process. We don't always see it when we're at our computers. We don't always think in terms of water. And usually electricity is more commonly associated with the cost. But is that something you'd put on your AI policy in your syllabus? Just a line that kind of directs students to understand the cost of talking to AI. And what do you do for yourself if you're going to use AI a lot? Do you not water your lawn that week? Or, how can we think of offsetting, in addition to just not being punitive or, kind of black or white saying we're not going to use it at all? Are there ways that we can mitigate our usage. So I really appreciate that, Tony. Any other group two? Anybody want to share anything on what you all talked about?
We spent time, I heard conversation about how people were using AI in their work at CGU, and then I was more moved toward reading the article and trying to discern what was happening. And what I saw was that the article was mostly concerned about the gap between the current state and desired state of AI sustainability, when it came to water, energy, and kind of the friction that between the owners and the users. Lots about money, the money involved in it. And I started to think about who carries the pain in this movement, this AI movement. I think I can call it an AI movement. And who really does hold the power here, and how can we kind of make it a more egalitarian product, which is always seems to be the goal as far as cultural studies people. Thinking about how long change will take before the costs are just out of control. I hear a lot about the AI bubble right now, and I notice lots of investments in it. And then I also think about training when we're training AI, and also training ourselves to use it, and how even, it's a process, it's a training process that is recursive. I think it's a lot like writing. We always have to keep revisiting to keep ourselves up to date on how to use it and how people are using it, and creating it and making it. And there's a lot, and it's overwhelming, and it makes me anxious.
Thank you for sharing that, Reese. That kind of everything all at once element is typically how these technological changes occur. And I appreciate you having a slow and mindful focus, because sometimes things can move very quickly, and people need information, or people are tired, people need help, and it's good to think about the ethics of the tools that we're using, and what kind of helpfulness we're going to adopt. So thank you for that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anybody else want to share? Okay. So I'm just gonna quickly go over a little bit more about those costs. And so this is an article, and again, it's clickable. This is an image of Cancer Alley. And this is kind of an example of the downstream costs. And the production side that we don't see. So we're at our computers, we're getting answers in seconds. But folks who are near these data centers, or as Tony mentioned, folks whose water is being siphoned off, usually in the global south, um, where corporations can go and extract water without paying taxes. That's another issue. Are the folks who are feeling the cost, feeling the burden. And AI, also, as Tony mentioned, has to be, the data centers need to be at a certain temperature, and they actually can't use right at this moment like salt water or reclaimed water because it has to be the freshest drinking water grade supply to run these data centers. And so, we need drinking water on the planet. Is that necessarily something that we really want to be giving up and if we do, at what scale? So I encourage you to check out this article on Cancer Alley and also this article linked below that kind of go into the data centers. But in a nutshell, bolded there, it's really the locations of the servers and kind of the energy grid use, as well as the training procedures and the hardwares that are into play here. But then, oh, sorry, can you see my screen still, or are you looking at something else?
We can still see the screen.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good. Then we get to, sorry, it keeps, okay, here we go. So this is a $1 trillion industry, $1.5 trillion industry, in kind of projected. But again, as Reese mentioned, who's paying the cost? Well, one of the companies, Meta, is outsourcing labor as typically happens in global markets. And that looks like in one particular country, Kenya, workers are making $2 an hour to go through and sort all of the toxic images. So images that might be graphic violence or sexually explicit images. The AI, because it's still learning, can't sort through these images on its own. And we actually need human beings to go in and filter out these images. And so there's been an immense mental health toll on these workers and additional exploitation of making $2 an hour. And so it's important to look at the cost, the labor, what's going into to this quote unquote intelligent system. And again, who's paying? Who's funding the research? When we mentioned the power that we have, where is research funding going? If you are receiving some type of philanthropic gift or donation for your research, then you have a lot of power in how that research is conducted. We have power as users. But we're also in a power relationship with capital investors, shareholders, and so on and so forth. So I encourage you to kind of look through this and understand a little bit more about who pays the cost. And again, going back to the Global South, this is a great article called Algorithmic Colonization of Africa. And this kind of goes into the split costs of those upstream and downstream, but also Western perspectives, values in the data sets. And so thinking about diversity of knowledge production, we want to make sure that our AI is informed by a diversity, multicultural understanding of knowledge. And so this is a good article kind of on how the AI is being trained, in addition to the data centers and the hardware that go into that process. And again, I know we're kind of coming up on time here, so I'm just going to walk you through, and I hope that you look at the rest of this material at your own time. But if you really want to understand the value chain, this is a really good, UC Berkeley made their own task force, AI task force, and they go into the investment risk and kind of go into the entire supply chain and understanding government levers of power, shareholder power, right down to like the hardware, the life cycle, and production of the technology itself. So I encourage you to do that. And then for folks that are in the humanities, just like we did a previous case study, this is another case study on different ways, if you are in the humanities, that you can lessen your AI impact. So these bullet points kind of go into like data consent, stewardship, making sure that the wealth goes back into the community, what values being generated, how slow is your scholarship, making sure that efficiency isn't taking over mindfulness and ethics. So I encourage you, if you are interested in the humanities, to check this out. And if you're in STEM, check out this carbon aware modeling. So for STEM folks, I know we have a CSAT representative here from the department, and check out some of these methods. If you are doing large data computations, and AI is just a part of your everyday procedure in your classrooms. David Patterson did a really good article on large neural network training and carbon emission. So I encourage you to check that out. And here I just mapped out key areas of intervention from a data governance perspective. So if you're doing any kind of research, in addition to the IRB ethics, I feel like the IRB hasn't caught up exactly with AI yet. So these are some areas of ethics that you could build into your research. And infrastructure, again, how to look at the hardware, the life cycle aspects of AI use that Tony brought up in terms of water availability, energy consumption, and why it's important to intervene here, because those costs are often some of the most hidden. And here, kind of model development. I see Reese seconded that IRB has not caught up. So yeah, I actually work on the IRB committee, and that's something that we'd like to build out into our ethical questions, is if they're using any AI. And then downstream, kind of what we talked about with Cancer Alley and outsourced labor, algorithmic colonization. And then these are closing resources I'd like to offer you. And I'm just going to walk you through them. If you click on this, it will take you to the Google Drive that has all of the 3 bibliographies, all of the slides from the 3 webinars I've given on AI. And then this, if you click here, this will take you to the document, the Google Doc that we worked on today. So I encourage you, put comments in it, write in it. This can be a back and forth that we have. If you want support building out a Canvas course, that's something Cafe loves to help professors with and students. Drop a comment into the Google Doc. I'll be checking it very regularly. If you have a citation or a source that you come across, please drop it in here. And I really appreciate you all joining me today. And while I'm pulling up, yeah, the Google Drive, are there any closing questions, comments? I understand some folks might need to go, so thank you so much for joining me. For those of you that can stay, any parting thoughts? Okay, well, folks are thinking. This is the Google Doc that I will drop in the chat. You can see it has all of the, here it is. Can everybody see the AI and the future of AI bibliography, AI political economy? Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, perfect, okay. So what I did was I made a bibliography of sources that are skeptical of AI. Highly recommend the Algorithmic Justice League, Unmasking AI Harms and Biases. That goes into the data sets fed into AI, but there's a lot of really amazing resources. The Ida B. Wells Just Data Lab, if you're really interested in how people are intervening, really recommend checking these out. And then sources that are pro AI, very positive on working AI into education. AI EDU sends out newsletters weekly on ways to incorporate AI into your classroom. And there's a lot of learning theory and educational AI resources, pedagogy resources here. So I encourage you to check these out. And then if you want to know what CGU is saying about AI right now, there's CGU's website from Cafe on AI. There's readings from courses on AI. And then if you're curious about like military use of AI, ongoing conflict, I'm trying to amass some sources there as well. So this is by no means exhaustive, but hopefully a good start for you all. And just comment on what you like, what you don't like, and please keep the conversation going. And again, I'm just going to drop in the link to this Google document. And that has all the slides for today. Thank you so much for coming, Crystal. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nari. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, thank you all for coming. If there's any